And I really put the topic today is what you said. We're going to talk about pyramids and the end of the world. So that is the topic for today, kids. The pyramid and the end of the world.
And I don't think anyone can dispute with the fact that the world is ending. We don't know what pace it's ending at, but the world
Right.
is
It is
ending.
ending. That's very true. Look at you. You're so philosophical today. This is going to be a great cigar show. And it's the last cigar show of Ramadan, which means next week, you know what comes next week. You know who will be here. Here he He'll be here. Finally, I'll get to actually run that thing for real.
That video has been played so many times
And
without
now
without the payoff. Without the
without the payoff.
payoff.
And can I tell you, we put it on Instagram and it blew up on Instagram.
Oh,
Everyone's like,
really?
when's Usman coming back? I go, first Saturday in April.
Oh my God.
So he'll be back.
No,
But
it's
you know
not a
what we'll do?
cigar. It's not a cigar show without cigars, and
That's
it's
true.
not a
Well,
cig.
kind of.
And even if you've got the cigars, you still need someone who needs to be able to talk reasonably, in an educated way
Educated
about
about it.
this. Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
there's a reason for the sunglasses. I'll tell you straight after you cue the credits.
All right, well, let's cue the credits.
This is 2OF Entertainment.
Welcome to Hsabanos Saturday, the fastest growing cigar show on YouTube with over 100,000 subscribers. Come join us every Saturday live. Every Saturday live.
I'm sorry. And we'll give a big shout out to the World Voice guy, Rob Vega,
Ooh,
who did that for us. Yeah, that's Rob Vega. He did all our voiceovers on the channel. So
yes, so
yeah,
Rob.
you know Rob. You've been on a show with us.
I was
Yeah,
on a show with Rob maybe about a year and a half ago.
I know.
That was
Yeah.
your sermon from a German show.
Oh, with Gerard. Yeah,
Now,
he's still. Yeah,
and I have a feeling it was more than a year and a half ago. It was a couple of years ago. We were talking
maybe.
about were we talking about racism or something like that? Some
Probably
some topic
racism.
like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, because he's from South Africa, so you know what that means right off the bat.
Ifrikov.
So
Well, so let me apologize. The reason I'm wearing sunglasses and the reason why my voice is slurring is not because I've been on some sort of hedonistic party.
yes,
It's
I was that way.
because the energy is genuinely like it happens every year in increasing amounts. I find at
Right.
the end of Ramadan, I'm slightly more absent-minded. I'm slightly slower out of bed. And actually,
Oh,
this Ramadan, I'm suffering.
I'm sorry
I
for your
felt,
girlfriend.
well, I felt for the past 2 or 3 days
Yeah.
like some bit of dry eye. Now it could be that the weather in this part of the
Right.
world is a bit weirdly mild.
Hmm.
So you have to get, living in London is an experience in itself because not one year, there are similarities from year to year with weather and people, but there are these slight changes. And then you throw in Ramadan into the mix, which kind of is not at a fixed point in the year. It's constantly
Right.
traveling through, from year to year because it's lunar cycle.
Right.
So
Right.
next year it'll be maybe 10 days, 2 weeks earlier than this year.
Hmm.
So there's this constant playing around with the body clock,
Right.
with how you're thinking, how you're getting up, and normally food and water cancels that out, but even that is absent right now. So and cigars.
Man,
So
it's like being in prison.
it's like being in it's like being in something.
Yeah.
I couldn't say if it was like being in prison. I would say it's more like being in some sort of interplanetary journey. You know what I mean?
Ah,
You're kind of like
sure.
on a journey, and then we've got this added layer. Now I don't know it's because of the absence of food in my system, but
Okay.
I find myself sitting around for 20, 30 minutes 2 or 3 times in a day where I'm just checking to see what's happening. I don't watch the conventional news on TV or anything like that. I rely on all the information that's coming into this brain, coming from places like social media and news that I choose to watch, as opposed to
Okay.
news that's just playing.
Right.
And it is for that reason why I thought that it might be nice, even though this is a cigar program without actually any cigars at hand.
For the last
To
week,
have
this
a
is the last time.
yeah. To have a slight stab at something that's kind of been niggling me. I don't know if it's niggling
Okay.
you, right? And it's one story, but this story kind of sums up the way the world is thinking these days,
Okay.
right? Um, it's a very good example of how people have suddenly engaged into stuff they know fuck all about, right?
This is going
Okay,
to be good. I mean,
and
everything.
that's becoming the way of the world, right?
Right.
Everyone's got an opinion. It used to be just taxi drivers. You'd go to anywhere in the world, and a
Right.
taxi driver would have an opinion on absolutely everything, especially
Yeah.
politics. Yeah,
Right.
and
Right.
you think, how are you qualified? Uh,
Most of them were
um,
though. Most of them were
Sorry.
like PhDs. Most of them from in New York City were PhDs from their country, and they were driving a cab because they wanted a better life. So they were qualified in New York.
Yeah. But
Mhm.
it's not restricted to New York. Go
Right.
anywhere on the planet.
That's true.
Anywhere on the planet, the taxi driver will always have a bloody opinion
Mhm.
about, and I don't know if it's just about making conversation, but they seem to have very, very, strong opinions anyway.
Right. Right.
So this story about the pyramids, which has come up
Yeah.
in the last week or two, and since I mentioned it to you, I think it was yesterday, we were contemplating what are we going to be talking about on this week's show. The
Other
thing
than
that's
making
at the
fun of
forefront
Usman.
of my at the forefront of my mind, whether it's cigar related or
Right.
not, but these are, I'd like to think that we make an attempt, even in our own way, to have a slightly intellectual stab at what's going on, if you know what I mean, whether it's the
Sure.
cigar industry or politics or history or whatever it is. Okay,
Right.
so this thing that's come up about the pyramids, I've actually got it's piqued my interest because as a kid at school, my first project was like the first big project I ever did. I had to do a study. I think I was 14, 13 or 14 years old. I had to do a history project. I chose the ancient Egyptians. I
Right.
found that fascinating kind of stuff, right? I remember, reading through books and uh, sort of like at that time, these were not sort of, this was not alternative media. This was just like hypotheses. It's like,
Right.
it could be like this, it could be like this, they could be aligned up like this. There's all sorts of mysterious elements to this. But the issue is this, that recently a couple of I think Italian American perhaps scientists who are pretty kind of, they're noteworthy, but they're not completely out there. They've got some
Right.
credentials. They've used some kind of radar technology. They call it this Doppler technology.
Right.
And without actually digging into the ground, they have done some scans from some satellites, and they've come to some weird conclusions, which some people have embraced instantly. And they basically, what they've said is that between underneath the pyramids, you can see, X number of columns that extend
Right.
almost 600 meters down into the ground. And once they get down there, then there's another labyrinth that opens up. So this could be one of many things. It could be like a lost city. It could be that the pyramids are the sort of like a power beacon channeling energy down. It could be, my hypothesis is that there might be some technology down there, and the pyramid itself, this great big blocks of stone, are there so that no one ever will ever move them again. It took so much effort to put them there that it's
Mhm.
like a sort of a bottle top on a bottle that no one wants open, if you know what I mean,
Sure.
right? So, or it could be nothing. It could be it could be sensationalists looking for some funding so they can go and get some, they can earn a living. It could be a lot of
Right.
things. And the thing that there's sort of a common thread between this and the sort of this thing that's broken up on the internet, on social media, about the moon landings being fake, and now we're
Mhm.
really digging into the science of, are these moon landings fake or not, and etc. Is the thing that I find funny is that there is no, sorry, I've got messages coming in. I will silent all of them. Is that there is no amount of end of information available.
Mhm.
There's no end of visual information. To get simple people excited, you just have to show them pictures and videos, to be very, very
Right.
honest with you. Yeah. Right. There's no real intellectual sort of like armchair thinking. Oh, I saw a video of an alien. There must be an alien. Right.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right.
Now, I find it funny because I have arguments with my brother about this. And I don't mean heated arguments, sort of like he's been saying for 30, 40 years, yeah, there was no lunar landing, etc. He's been saying
Right.
that for 30, 40 years. I said, well, the thing is, here's the problem. The problem is you're presented with either no information or
Mhm.
so much information that you're still trawling through it to
Right.
find what's reality. And what's funny uh, is that anytime on social media you're presented with stuff, there is infinitely more opportunity to manipulate it as well in any direction you want.
Right.
And that's what is really kind of it. I'm finding it interesting. I'm finding that in my heightened state of fasting and etc. etc.
Right.
I'm trying to have a little bit more of a. I feel like a slightly drunk Jack Sparrow. You know what I mean? I'm a little bit
Oh my
like this,
God.
but
Right.
yeah, but hopefully, well, not. I mean, I say that in a nice way. That it'll probably be Eid tomorrow here in London, so I'll be back to normal kind of routine. But all this gives me kind of pause for thought. What's going on in the world?
Right.
Are we being constantly manipulated? Are we constantly being led? And the resounding answer I have in my head is yes. Whether it's
Mhm.
on standard of living or spending money, we're always being told what to do, what to think, how to act, how fast you can drive, how slow you can drive. You're always being told all the time. And I'm finding that most people, including myself on occasions, we have this sheepish kind of mentality. We just kind of like just follow all along with it. So
Mhm.
that's what's been at the forefront of my mind. And the thing that brought it all up is this pyramid thing. I don't know what you think about it. Where do you
I think
where
so. I go back to Nikola Tesla, not the car, the real guy, when he's talking about free energy and he built the towers. His hypothesis was the pyramids, because there's pyramids all over the world.
yeah.
And so his hypothesis, and a lot of scientists that have IQ points think that it was for free energy all over the world. And Graham Hancock, who I love his books, he says that we've somewhere in our DNA we lost what our history is. So I think that's part of um, the issue. I think we lost our history, and because we lost our history, we don't really know what the pyramids did or didn't do. So I saw the scans that they were showing of the columns and underneath and whatnot. So I don't know if it's hiding something or if it's just a super advanced power plant. And here's the funny thing: if a government does know, they're never going to let them dig down 600 meters to the columns or past it, because God forbid you told the world the truth. It's kind of like religion keeps you in your place, like, oh, you have to be good, you're going to die, blah, 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 whatever. All right, whatever, bullshit. Um, and we always talk about the Gateway Project with the CIA and other things. So I think, and I talked to a guy, this is a guy I go back into the late 80s, early 90s, who worked for an agency that doesn't exist. When we were on a flight going somewhere, and he said, "Do you know what the number one scariest thing is?" Not anymore with the orange man. He's the number one scariest thing. But she said, "You know what the number one scariest thing is with intelligence agencies and governments around the world and religion?" I'm like, "No." He said, "If the public ever found out the truth about extraterrestrial life, multi-universes, and I went through this litany of things, and he says, the number one directive is to hide that." And I thought that was a
Is
fascinating
there
statement. Huh?
the number one directive is?
Is to hide it from the public. And his reasoning, he said, is the reasoning is this: if I tell you, let's say next Saturday I do this show from the planet Pluto, you're like, how'd you get to Pluto? Oh, my friends, the lizard people. And people are gonna be like, holy shit, this these Pluto, it's real, blah blah. So what happens then if I say, Riza, what are you? Are you Pakistani? Are you British? Are you this? Are you that? You know what you become an earthling. Once you become an earthling, a government and a religion now can't control you,
There you go. We're
because
divided and ruled. Yeah.
because all of a sudden now you're like, we've been lied to, and they knew about it. You believe nothing. So what happens is, and their hypothesis is that then the world comes, the people come together, which would kill politicians and religion, because they're like, it's all bullshit. So
It's
I
the
thought that
same.
was a
I mean, it's the
fascinating
same.
hypothesis.
I believe it's the same thing as farming. If a cow knew that it was born on this planet for free and it could do what it wanted, and its
Right.
job wasn't to give you milk and meat, we just roam free.
Yeah.
Instead, it stays caged in a, I won't say in a cage, but it stays in a farm. It stays within boundaries, and it is used. And that's what I think. And it's not just me, obviously, and it's not just now. That's
Right.
always the way it's been. We are subjugated. We are in subjugation, and we always have been, intellectually, physically,
Right.
emotion, in every single way. And
Right.
what I find weird about this thing about the pyramids, and I remember reading a book. As I said, I did a project when I was 13 or 14 years old on, it
Hmm.
can't have been a complicated project, but, a schoolboy project on what the
Right.
pyramids are about. Even then, there was literature which said, the pyramid was the right shape to channel energy down to the core.
Yep.
This was 40 years ago, right? Yeah. So God knows what was existed before that. If, if by common consensus, the universe as we
Right.
know it, is about what, 13.1, 13.2 billion years old. The universe, they say that's the time from the Big Bang till now,
Right.
right? Based on the slightly more accurate measurements that came from Stephen Hawking, the Hawking radiation. Hawking
Hmm.
radiation is basically the last remnants of energy that we can detect from the Big Bang. And we have a scientific methodology to work out how old that radiation is, and therefore an approximation as to when at least this cycle of existence began, because the Big Bang may
Right.
not have been the beginning. It could have been the big oscillation, if you know what I mean. It could have been many Big
Right.
Bangs, and we could be. There are the hypotheses now we exist in a black hole, and that every universe, every dimension exists in separate black. There's no end of
Mhm.
this. Yeah, right. Okay.
Right. There's another one that we live
As
in a
Plato
matrix.
says,
There's
it's
one we live in a
turtles
video
all the way
game.
down.
Yeah.
The universe was meant to be one turtle on top of another turtle on top, and
Yeah.
someone asked how many turtles. He says turtles all the way down.
Yep.
So if we've existed, if thought, let's call it thought or
Okay.
matter, has existed for 13.1 billion years, are you telling me that we we are 100% sure that we as human beings right now in 2025, we're the only incarnation of intelligent life that has got to this
Yeah.
stage?
That would be
I,
something.
I, I find that just with the numbers,
Hmm.
and I'm a physicist
By
by
trade.
academia.
Right.
Just by numbers, I find that astounding that a scientist can say we are the most intelligent things on the in the universe because that's all we've encountered, and yet at the same time say the universe is so old and so vast we haven't got a clue what's in it. So it's so old and so vast, and yet we're 100% sure we're the only things in it.
Right.
I find that at odds. And I
Yeah.
find that every time we look at they call them megaliths, these
Right.
huge blocks of stone, whether they're statues, whether they're pyramids, whether they're
Hmm.
giant underground structures, the story of Atlantis,
Yep.
these tales, these legends that come down in literature, and they come down in literature from all sorts of different angles: the Sumerian texts, the biblical texts, the X text, whatever.
Right.
They have commonality. Fucking hell. And you don't want to even acknowledge that we may just have restarted again on this planet,
Right.
10, 20,000 years ago. Because I essentially, my gut feeling is that's what's happened. Is like,
Yeah.
so around sort of pre-dynastic Egypt and the dynasties, the sort of
Right. The Egyptian dynasties. Yeah.
the dynasties are sort of like, uh, anyone correct me, I believe 4 to 5,000 BC. And
Yeah.
then
I think it's like
before,
five
and
or
then
five or
before
six.
that, you have what's called pre-dynastic ancient Egypt.
Right.
I read somewhere that the pyramids were older to Cleopatra than Cleopatra is to us.
Correct.
So to Cleopatra, the pyramids were an ancient
There.
relic,
And the Sphinx as well, by the way.
and the
It's
Sphinx,
supposed. It's supposed to be. Yeah.
and the Sphinx as well. So these things are kind of like hiding in plain sight. There you go. There you go. There's a feat of engineering that some people are dismissively talking about as giant stones rolled on logs.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, these feats of engineering, not only can they not be repeated, people can't work out why they would do them in the first place.
Right.
You know, tombs, etc., 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 etc. Anyway, I have a gut feeling that whether there is anything in this science of or not about these columns or not, because
Yeah.
apparently this these scans were done not from the side but from a significant distance away in the sky from satellites, so looking
Right.
down. So what they used is they got a set of data, right? So imagine if you're I don't know, if you're in an aeroplane, you're flying over the sea and you're doing radar and you can actually spot there's a submarine. Okay, you can see there's a, you know, just using radar, you can see there's a shape.
Right.
Yeah, you might even, given the type of radar, be able to work out, you know, the density of that submarine and whether it's got people in it or not, if it's empty or if it's a solid. But you won't be able to discern its shape from the side. And so
Yeah.
what this thing they've done about these columns, I don't know if you've seen any of the photos, or sorry, not
I've seen the
photos, but
stuff. Yeah, I've
the
seen it.
graphics,
Yeah.
is these were AI generated. So
Mm.
what AI has done is say, well, based on what information I'm getting, this is what it could be like.
Right.
And that has become viral.
Right.
Okay, because sensational, there are some people who believe, some people who'd like to believe, some people who dismiss, but that they still write comments. But it has blown up into a source of commentary for
Right.
believers, unbelievers, and people in the middle, etc., etc., etc. What it is interesting is that it's as usual ignited a topic that I think is a really interesting journey into where we came from. And you perhaps don't have to look at the stars, you just have to look at this planet. And there's plenty of unexplored archaeological sites
Mm.
that need that. So this was what was going on in my mind in the last few days. And I thought I'd share that with you, Stephen.
I like that. Well, I will say what's fascinating is that the government of Egypt and the guy who runs the pyramid section of it, you have to get permission to do any kind of scanning or excavating. So really, um, the scientists who did the satellite imagery would need his permission to put like a radar or a lidar or whatever on the ground to do it. And I will bet money that he won't allow it. I think they know more about, like even the Sphinx. They said the head of the Sphinx is not the original head.
Mm.
They said that head was made later. If you, I guess, when they
In sort
carbon
of
dated later,
in dynastic Egypt, they carved it
right?
out as
And
the head
then
of the
somebody
pharaoh.
said they didn't like whatever it was, and they made a new one. So when you look at all the hieroglyphics on the wall, and I've read the Book of the Dead, and that's fascinating. I don't know if you've ever read the Book of the Dead, which is the Egyptian creation story. It's fascinating. Um, but when you look at all the hieroglyphics and you look at all these different, if you will, creatures with these heads and there's this and there's that, people go, "Oh no, that's their costume. They're telling the story." I don't know if I believe that. And even as a kid, I was like, yeah, no. I mean, you know, everything has some sort of point of origin. Like we talked about this once before, kidding around. Like, you know, they say dragons didn't exist. Really? Because it's lore all over the world. You know what I mean? Like before China and, you know, Europe were seeing each other, they all had stories of dragons or unicorns or pick whatever you want. So I think there's more truth to it. I think, to Graham Hancock and to your point, probably a couple million years ago, we were probably in a planet was probably very advanced, and something happened where it could have been the Atlantis hypothesis that there was a nuclear war, and then you had maybe a meteor, and probably more of a nuclear war, wiped everything out, and we, you know, whoever survived began. And so, you know, they destroyed everything, and you know, you're going like, okay, we got to start from day one again. So I think
The,
there's a lot to it.
the world, the structure of the world, and I mean the structure of humanity as it is
Mhm.
now, is only recent. Uh, about 100 years ago, and it's based on where people start their point of history. You
Mhm.
see, in the last 2,000, maybe 3,000 years, three major religions, Abrahamic religions, and all
Right.
the other religions.
Right.
The commonality is this perception that it's all started very recently in the
Right.
last five, 6,000 years. Okay, and that's where our literature is attached, and the workings of the world for the past 1,000 years up until the last 50 years, yeah, it was all
Mhm.
about royal families and who has entitlement to
Right.
land and etc. And it's by royal decree, and royal decree comes from godly decree, and godly decree comes from religious decree, right? So if you took all those things out,
Yeah.
then no one has any right to rule anyone or rule anything
Mhm.
or make up any rules, right?
Correct.
And now we live in a world for the last, let's say, 100 years, sort of like after the First and Second World Wars, is based on economic power rather
Mhm.
than religious power.
Right.
Okay, like who has the most resources, who's got therefore the most military. Now if you took the basics of the cornerstones of these beliefs away, right, and said that, well, hang on, technology was far outdates man by 10, 20, 30,000 years, 100,000 years ago.
Mhm.
We had technology, and so it could have been us, and aliens, it could have been
Mhm.
aliens, it could have been a lot of different things. Yeah,
Right.
we may have arrived on this planet from another planet. It's not inconceivable
Right.
that if the Earth has been around, what is it, 4 or 5 billion years, or Earth has been forming for the past 4 or 5 billion years, and there were dinosaurs living on this planet maybe 400, is it 150, 200 million years ago,
Mhm.
it's not inconceivable that other life has been here in that time. Other civilizations have been here in that time. And if you look at the sort of clues from even recent texts, and I say recent, I'm talking about in the last 3,000 years, they all allude to this, that
Mhm.
civilizations have got very big and then they've been wiped out. They've got very
Right.
big and they've been wiped. Now, it's up to you whether you attribute that to God, creator, or facilitators, the angel, whatever you want to do. But the story is the same. Is about growth, death, rebirth. Growth, death, rebirth. And
Right.
so I think we have an island mentality. We live on an island
Mhm.
in our brains. We live on an island and we think that's it. It can't have been anything more than that. There's nothing beyond the waters, right? And that's convenient for people who run the world. It's convenient for them because we are all, but we all buy into that myth. And the fact that now everyone is talking about everything as being a hoax.
Mhm.
Everything on social media is everything is a hoax, whether you want to talk about 9/11, whether you want to talk about the Holocaust, whether you want to talk about moon landings. Everyone has got an opinion. And that's kind of fair that everyone can
Mhm.
have an opinion, yeah. But I find that this overly sensationalized discussion is normally between people who haven't got a fucking clue. They just see
Yeah.
pictures and sound, and they have an opinion. You
Well,
see, so
the
it's very
interesting
hard. Sorry.
no, no, you said the interesting thing that you're saying is that like you talk about we're on an island. So now you go from that to the flat Earth people that say there's the Great Wall and blah blah blah. So if it's there's always truth in something. The other
There's always some truth. That's
truth in
that's
right,
exactly it. There's
right,
always some truth. Now it requires
thought,
some sort of self-discipline, intelligence, some sort of deep dive to take the truth out of a bunch of lies.
right.
Right? Yeah. I find that particular pursuit in itself has become very, very fashionable. The
Hmm.
debunking fashion, right? So the pyramids have been standing there for X, number of thousands of
Right.
years, tens of thousands of years. Suddenly, someone has done this. I believe all they've done is ignited something that was already there. They've ignited a sort of a discussion that sort of kind of waxed and waned away. Um, it's interesting. I'm finding it. I would, by the way, I would love for some great revelation to come along and say, for there to be some great revelations of sort of like demystifying. It's so clear. The
Right.
aliens came down 30,000. I don't believe that's ever going to happen, and I don't believe it's ever going to happen because for the reason that we are dumbed down as
Hmm.
people, and our life cycle of whatever it is, between, I don't know, how long does the oldest human live? Maybe 110, 120 years old.
Right.
You can never be around long enough to get to the nitty gritty, if you know what I mean. Just another
Right.
generation comes along and another one and another one. We don't learn from our mistakes. We carry
Right.
on like sheep, just following the same code. I have an argument with a friend about driving in London. I can tie that into this one. Suddenly, everywhere in London is 20 miles per hour since COVID, right? Someone just made up the
Mhm.
rules that we're all just going to drive at 20 miles per hour. No science,
Right.
nothing. Because we decided it. Oh, you can't turn left in this road. You used to be able to turn left. Now you can't turn left. Someone just makes up the rules as you
Right.
go along, and that for me is sort of like the way that life is these days. People just make rules up as they go along, just to keep you in place. Um, and So I'm very, very, very interested where this going. This is going from a human perspective. Are we getting dumber? Are we getting cleverer? Are we just are we staying static,
No, we're getting dumber
thinking?
as a society. We're getting
Yeah.
much dumber as a society.
So this translates into all sorts of life. It translates into finance. It
Mhm.
translates into politics. It translates into spiritualism. It translates absolutely everywhere. But I'll tell you one thing: it is scary. It is scary. I'm kind of like, is this really this? There's some sort of turning point after COVID, and uh, is this some sort of ending coming here? There's a sort of a nervosa in the air, as far as I can feel.
Right.
It's like if everyone can talk about anything in a very qualified way,
Yeah. It's the
and
end. It's the end of the world, and we're
the
very
end of the
excited.
world as we know it.
Yeah, just so you know, here at the Lizard People Illuminati Society, we're very excited for the end of the world because we get to start over. But here's an interesting fact that you may not know. I read a history book. I'm
There's
very
very
proud of
few
myself.
facts I don't know.
Very true. But I read this history book. This had to be about 20 years ago. It was talking about the Mayas and the Incas and whatever. And the Maya and the Inca story about how the pyramids were built, their pyramids. They said they just appeared overnight one night. And the lore there is that, and I thought this is something about a meter high with a white beard and overalls is the way they described it. I mean, I think they made it more modern, but they said just showed up one day, and then the next day there were these pyramids all over South America. And I thought that was, and that's their lore between the Aztecs and the Mayas, how their pyramids got there.
Now,
If I find interesting is no one can, there's no lore and there's no scientific history and there's no book and there's no manuscript, there's nothing on the walls in Egypt to tell you how their pyramids got there. So that's interesting.
so the Mayan pyramids just appeared, correct?
That's what the Mayas and the Incas say. Their pyramids. One day these little guys showed up, and the next day there were pyramids all over.
So that in traditional speak is called a
Mhm.
miracle, correct? It's a miracle. It's a miracle. Here it is, yeah.
No, it's
Right.
technology.
It's as much of a no, but when you don't understand the technology, it's a miracle, correct?
Okay, sure, let's go with that.
Yeah. So for the average person, for the
Mhm.
average grass eating, sort of hair lipped kind of individual, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right,
it's a
right.
miracle, right? And that's as much a miracle as the Red Sea parting or Jesus bringing
Oh,
Lazarus back to
wait,
life. Yeah,
I got something for you on the Red Sea. You want to
go
hear
on,
this?
go
So
on.
there's this was on a debate. I watched it. This guy is a world famous. I can wish I remember his name. A Egyptologist, and he said there are historical records that talk about one of the princesses was floating down the Nile and she was playing with her necklace and it dropped. And they stopped the barge, and the priest took his staff, which is some sort of technology, and parted the waters, climbed down the barge, and now the Nile was dry, picked up her necklace, climbed back up to the barge, put the water back, and went forward. So what they said about Moses parting the sea, my landsman, I was there. I remember really we were just in the desert looking for a penny for 40 years, but that's another story. Um, is that it wasn't, if you will, it took you a while. It wasn't God, if you will, it was technology, just like the Ark of the Covenant. And when you read all this stuff, it's all technology driven, not so much a miracle, But technology, and then if
A,
you find
a,
these ancient histories, it's
a
fascinating.
miracle. I don't know if you can agree with me. Yeah, a
Okay.
miracle is a word. Miracle is a word which is used by people who do
Mhm.
not understand how something happened. You might as well call it
Right.
magic. You
Right.
might as well
Same
call it
thing.
magic,
Right. Right.
right? But behind the scenes of the curtain, right,
Right.
there is a methodology that if you revealed it would make some sense to you, right?
Correct.
So to if you were to take a light bulb back 200 years, 300 years. I dare not say 10,000 years because technology may have been more advanced then, yeah?
Right. Right.
But if you took a light bulb back 200 years ago or
Right.
300 years ago and you held it and lit it up, people would say it's a miracle. How can
Yeah.
you make something inanimate suddenly give out light, right? So they
Right.
wouldn't understand it. But if you showed them, well, it's connected like this and this chemical,
Hmm.
you could sit with an intelligent person, explain to them, well, actually, it's not a miracle. This is how it works.
Right.
And so as a religious person, I'm very spiritually religious person, extremely, right? Okay, like and I'm a scientist. Either way, I reconcile everything. Is that,
Mhm.
there are things that you can't explain, but it's not but the fact that you can't explain them doesn't mean they're not happening. It's just that
Right.
you can't explain them. And there is a methodology for, if you suddenly find, I don't know, a giant sphere that's landed, a metal sphere that's landed in the back of your garden, right?
Yeah.
200 years ago, you'd say it's a miracle. It's just appeared. I don't know where it
Hmm.
appeared from. It's inconceivable to you, right?
Right.
But if you had a video 200 years ago and you saw that it actually fell out of the sky, out of a spaceship and landed,
Right.
it's not, the miracle is then the spaceship. It's not the giant sphere. It's like you saw it happening. You can,
Right.
you can touch it. So miracles are things that people just don't understand. There is a way the world works. The fact that you don't understand it, it's okay for you to call it a miracle or a magic trick, or
Yeah.
you can call it hocus pocus,
Right.
but it happens. So the pyramids are there.
Right. That's
The
true.
pyramids are there. The megaliths are there.
Yep.
The fact that you can't explain them doesn't mean they're not there, and it doesn't mean that
Mhm.
technology is not there. It's just you can't get your head around how this trick, or let's call it a trick, how this magic
Yeah.
trick was done, where you've got millions and millions of tons of stone that is obviously covering something. So back to Egypt, it's called the Giza Plateau. Apparently, the
Right.
Giza Plateau is sort of a very wide area in terms of square miles, and the Giza Plateau has not just those three great big um, uh,
Pyramids.
uh, pyramids. There are
Yeah.
some
Others.
mini. There are some
Yeah.
smaller pyramids nearby. I know. I did lots of drawings of these and things. Uh, uh,
But they're
and
not
research
built
on.
to the specifications and specs of the three, which is fascinating. The other pyramids that are
So
nearby are
those
built kind
those
of
are those are almost as tributes to the original
right. They're
ones,
like they're
right?
it'd be like a
It's the
professional builder.
half-assed attempt. It's the
Right. The
half-assed attempt.
professional builder built the real pyramids, and then you and I got together and go, yeah, we'll make a tribute.
So,
It's
as
like
I was saying, the
yeah,
pyramids to Cleopatra were still ancient monuments.
pyramids.
We are
Yeah.
closer in time to Cleopatra than she was to those pyramids, and they were. So those pyramids, in terms of dating, there's all sorts of. There's a large scale of what people think that
Right.
some people say 10,000, some people say 30,000.
Yeah.
30,000 years ago, right? So that goes into the ancient Egyptian. They might be there for 100,000 years. Or
Right.
no one gives specific information because they're very, very hard puzzles to solve. If they
Right.
were easy puzzles to solve, they would be solved. People would be able to replicate. Okay. The fact that a pyramid is so vast, I believe it was done so that it would not be replicated. It's a way of showing, look, this is something that we can do that you can't do, even through
Right.
time. Or I'm conjecturing that the pyramid is a great sort of a seal on top of what might be underneath him, might be a pathway
Right.
to a hidden city or lost technology or whatever it may be.
But
Um,
all the pyramids are also on like the 30. I could be wrong, like the 38th parallel around the world. They all line up on the same um, line, which I thought was fascinating when I read a book about it. So that's where I think Nikola Tesla came in. It's energy. It's free energy. It's the dark energy out there that you can just pull in for free. And that's where they talk about, like in the ancient Egyptian texts and the Mayan text, they talk about all this, for lack of a better, magic, which is just technology, and it all came from the pyramid. So I think
It's
that's
tech. It's
interesting.
it's tech and methodology that you and I don't understand, right?
Oh, that's true.
But
Yeah.
it doesn't mean suddenly the pyramids vanish because you don't
Right.
understand. There they are. They're standing
Right.
there. How did they
Right.
get there, right? So it's like that's the thing I was saying, that steel ball that fell out of the
Right.
sky, right? Okay, it got there somehow.
Right.
Can you reverse engineer it? And that's what people have been trying to do for, maybe 100 years. They're trying to reverse work out, well, if we did it, how would we do it?
Right.
If we did it, the conjecture, if there is conjecture, is not if we did it. How about a civilization that thought in a different way, because
Hmm.
they're not here right now, right? They would have thought in a different way. They would have done it in a different way. We're just used to thinking about,
I've
what
got
we
one.
found is Stone
Yeah.
Age man and basic.
Because they
Uh,
understood they understood the universe and understood physics better. There's a guy who died in the 1930s, and he built something in Homestead, Florida. It's called the Coral Castle. Coral Castle is fascinating, and if you ever get a chance to go back to Miami, you need to visit this place. There are coral rocks down anywhere from a ton to 20 tons. This little 5 foot nothing guy from Eastern Europe had built this beautiful castle out of coral. And everything is on these little, you can push a 20-ton coral rock with your finger. And somebody said, how did you do this? And he said, I found the ancient secrets of the Egyptians. And somebody said that when there was a newspaper article that was out in the 1930s that said somebody looked over his wall one day and they said, what did you see? And he said, I saw him levitating this 20-ton coral thing. He's just with his hand, he's just walking it like nothing, like it was air. So I think they're like a Nicholas Tesla or this gentleman. I think there's things that they understood that for some reason we don't understand to this day.
well, this
And
is
that's
it. There's a fundamental scientific arrogance,
right.
okay? And I don't mean arrogant people. I mean as a field of study and pursuit, there's a fundamental arrogance built into it,
Mhm.
which says that we're the cleverest,
Right.
smartest people that ever lived, right? Just because of things like electricity and so we feel that in the last 200 maybe 300 years we have enhanced energy production
Right.
methodology, whether it was coal power or petrol power or electric power or magnetism. If you read basic biblical texts, Quranic texts, they talk about, King Solomon had the power of metallurgy. He
Mhm.
had the power to
Mhm.
manipulate metals, irons. There's iron is apparently iron was not iron as a metal was not is an alien metal to Earth.
Right.
It would have come down in some form. It's not something could have as a chemical, as an element. It could not have developed on Earth. It would have arrived at Earth
Okay.
because Earth didn't have the right conditions to form iron. You need great amounts of heat to form these elements. These elements have
Mhm.
arrived from different places, but Earth, iron came as an alien element. So the fact that King Solomon and his stories, and you could say their stories, myths, legends, etc., etc. You could do all this, right? But I would say they're just sort of like markers. These mythic stories are markers to common stories that have some common origin. This basic stuff about metallurgy you, is very difficult for scientists to say, oh, they really did have technology that we don't have.
Right.
There's this uh, arrogance that's kind of built into the way we think today, where we think we're the smart Alex and we have it all. The fact that I've got an iPhone in front of me makes me think I'm the smartest thing that lives in the universe. I'm not.
Right.
And so it's even perhaps harder for the scientific community to accept that smarter people lived on this planet, let alone in the stars.
Yeah.
And that's what's going on.
Well, to your point about your iPhone and what you're saying, I read this other book 100 years ago, was talking about metallurgy and whatnot. And it was talking about some of the cathedrals that are built in Europe back in the 13th, 14th, 15th century, the way their glass was made and the way they built it when it's hot outside, when it's like, 20, 30, 40 Celsius, it's cool in the church. And when it's cold outside, it's warm in the church. So I
Yeah.
thought that was fascinating just because of the way they designed it and built it. You can't do that today. I mean, because that art is lost, or whoever did it is no longer here, or they're just laughing at us like we're fools. The other thing about your iPhone, which I find fascinating, is the reason I think people are now more about look at UFOs, look at the pyramid, look at this, look at that, blah, 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 is because you can now, back in the day, like if there was a UFO, you'd be like, oh, I got to go get inside, get my camera, I got to get whatever. Now it's like, oh, look, there's a UFO, and you can follow it. What people forget is in 1954 in Washington, D.C., for 4 nights in a row, our Capitol was buzzed by UFOs. It was in the Washington Post, the New York Times. I mean, like there's pictures of the lights over the Capitol. They didn't know what it was. There's all this evidence, whether they live here and they're in the ocean, they're in the Arctic, whatever, or they're coming multidimensional. So there's evidence that we are not alone. It's just that the RAND report put out a paper back in the 60s that said, which is what the guy on the airplane told me, which said if we ever told the American or global population that they're real, all chaos will break, because there's no reason to listen to your leaders, because they're going to want them to be the leaders because they're smarter, they're more advanced, they're this, they're that. So the antiquated thinking we have as human beings, or whatever we are, is probably wrong. And ultimately, one day, when I guess they finally decide to tell us what's going on, or they just, land on the front lawn somewhere and go, hey, how you doing? I don't think it's 1960 anymore. I don't think people are going to be shocked. Literally, if a UFO landed, well, it can't land in New York, because they'd be like, get out of my way. I got things. You're in my way. You're busy. Like New York would be wrong place. But, in London, you guys have nothing going on. You can land at Buckingham Palace. Charles can fly away with his ears.
As long as you land at less than 20 miles per hour.
So slow down when you come. But I'm just saying, then all of a sudden that would be a sensation. People are like, oh my God, look. So I think we're getting to a point where people within the governments around the world, you got the defense minister of Canada and Israel saying we're in negotiations with people from other universes and dimensions all the time. So
I think
it's
it's
hard
happening at a slow pace, and that's what I was
Yeah.
trying to say. Is you and I will never ever see the story
I
from the
don't.
start to
I,
beginning.
no,
We just see pieces of the story.
right, but I think you and I will be around to see, if you will, for lack of a term, the spaceship land, or the aliens out. I know they said there's hybrids and all this other stuff. I think we'll be around for
I
that,
think you've
because
seen it. I think you've seen it.
no, but I mean,
I,
to the point where it's an everyday thing, where like when I'm like smoking a cigar,
I,
with Tom Toms with you, there'll be an alien sitting there smoking a cigar with us.
I totally agree, but
Yeah,
it's happening at a pace. This call it a revelation. This revelation is not a
right,
momentary revelation. It's happening through such a slow period of
right,
time. It's so normalized. It's
yeah,
quite conceivable. So this is the hypothesis I'll put to you. It's quite conceivable that if you and I were around in 500 years' time,
yeah.
let's time travel to 500 years in the future.
Okay.
People will be interacting with alien technology and aliens
Hmm.
without ever any real revelation having taken place between now and 500 years. This slow,
Right.
gradual, if you know what I mean, that
Yeah.
tiptoey without it. The reason for that is because, in the way you suggested, if there is a dramatic revelation at any time, it changes the way the world works. It changes the way
Right.
you and I spend money. It changes the way you and I live. It changes the way you and I think. It changes. If aliens land, I don't have to pay my electricity bill anymore. Who am I paying it
Right.
to for what? Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? The
Right.
Earth is under siege. I
Right.
don't need to do this. I don't need to do that. I don't need to drive at 20 miles per hour. I
Right.
don't need to respect a government building. I
Right.
don't need to worry about the court case that's coming up, because all of those things become inconsequential.
Correct.
But if you deliver this revelation in very, very small pieces over a great period of time, no one will even realize.
Hmm.
I put it to you. I put it to you. Okay, that we probably do use alien technology all the time without even knowing it right now.
Fiber optics, according to Phil Russo. Phil Russo
It
wrote a
could
book.
even be that electricity. It could. Now I'm going slightly sort of
Yeah.
out there, but it could be the electricity in itself is an alien technology that we're
Right.
using without knowing how it actually uh, has become a mainstay. So, for example, my phone, which is charged up wirelessly
Right.
on electricity, is running, and I don't think two things about it. I just
Right.
use
Right.
it, correct?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm suggesting, that in 500 years' time, you'll be interacting with people. Maybe we're interacting with aliens right now. Maybe Donald Trump is a supreme alien.
Wow. If he is, then we don't want to interact with them anymore. No, but I'm just saying. I think.
I suspect, and by the way, last thing, I suspect people who look as if they're in charge are definitely not in charge.
Right. I agree with that. I think there's the guy on the plane used to tell me very fascinating things as we traveled for a few months together. And like he said, there's the people that you elect, and then there's the people who do stuff. And I'm
That's
like,
right.
got it. And he's like, and
With
that there's two different worlds.
people who are in the public eye are, is I think, is a high chance that they're nothings.
Right.
They're nothing. They're inconsequential.
Right. And what Trump's doing is to the greater powers is just like, yeah, go ahead and do it. And then when we're done, we'll just take over again. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to cause a nuclear war. You're not going to do this. You're not going to do you guys play. When
Exactly.
we're tired of you playing, we'll step in.
That's
So
right. That's right.
yeah,
That's right.
um,
As long as you are able to keep the masses sedated,
happy. Right.
everything is cool.
Yeah, I agree with that. I
That's
I
when individual thinking, individual excellence is normally punished. That's when someone commits suicide. That's when someone disappears. That's when someone
right.
has a convenient car accident. That's when,
Yeah. Gets hit by a bus. I remember there's been a couple UFO people and a couple of inventors that came up with like they thought a cure for cancer or better elect whatever. And I remember like if you read how they died, it's kind of like, oh really? Like like the guy was healthy
to,
one day and the next day he's dead because of whatever, or this guy shot himself, or this guy got hit by a bus, or
to,
this guy this, and this. It's wild.
no, to this day, you remember the chief weapons investigator? I can't remember his name. His name has gone out of my brain now. This is
Yeah,
20 years ago, in the UK, who declared there were no weapons of mass destruction in
yeah,
Iran.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
and
can't
I
remember.
got
Uh, oh, he committed suicide in the woods.
yeah.
It's you just couldn't make this thing up,
Right.
right? You just couldn't
It's
write it
if you
that
were
way.
right, if you were watching a movie, you'd be like, "Stop it! That never
Yes,
happens."
I mean, right? Yeah, but that's what happens.
Yeah,
That's what happened. That is, and I'm not talking about sort of illicit government activity or anything. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about
yeah,
people who really actually can. They get to a point that actually make a difference. Wipe them out, because it
yeah.
it actually changes the balance of humanity.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
So people who can change the balance of humanity are the ones that get whacked, as they say.
And that's what I'm saying. There's a couple UFO guys. Ben Hopkins was one. He got hit by a bus in London because London, they don't know. But it's like when you look at all their deaths, and I watched this special, and it was done like by real investigative reporters, and I was like, all right, there's nothing to do. I'll watch it, and it was fascinating because they just took the facts, and they'd be like, like they were this, they were that, and the next day they killed them. Really? And like the guy said, one of the guys who killed himself, the way that when the police found the gun and this and that, the one reporter, they said, let's try to kill ourselves like this. And he said, you
And they
have to
couldn't
be
do it.
right. He said, you have to be a contortionist, and I need three other people to help me. So a lot of it's sort of like, and I'm going to make a little tongue in cheek here, like Men in Black. It's like, oh, getting close to the truth. Can't have that, and we don't have the little clicker that
You
vanishes
see,
your
and
mind.
that's just it. You see things like Men in Black. They're
Yeah.
they're relegated to fantasy.
But it's technically not, apparently, because people talk
No,
about it all the time.
no, no. I mean, what I'm saying is the fact that you and I are talking about this, right?
Yeah.
It's okay to talk about this if we're talking about it tongue in cheek, as if it's
Yeah.
sort of like, yeah. If the moment you get serious about it and you prong seriously,
Mhm.
it's like touching a hornet's nest.
Right.
That's what it's like. It's like, you want to touch this hornet's nest, you're going to get stung.
Right.
And
Right.
that's the way I believe the powers that be, alien powers, super
Mhm.
intelligent powers, uh, I believe that they have to be super intelligent, even if they're not alien. They're super intelligent
Right.
powers. People, beings who live on
Right.
this earth, who run everything.
Yeah.
And what you see is never what you get Oz does hide behind a green
The
curtain.
curtain. That's true. Oh, wait. You want to hide? We're going to hide behind the green curtain. Hold on. There you go. Oz is hiding behind the green curtain. There you have
And
it.
I'm wearing green as well, green tweed.
There you go. There you go. We'll do. All right. Enough of the Oz thing. We don't want to scare people.
No, that's quite
We'll-
nice. Leave it, leave it. I really like that. I think
all right.
that's a good new look.
All right.
Leave it.
We're gonna the green. When Usman's here next week, we're gonna do the green. That'll be very exciting.
You'll
But
like that. He's the green man.
there you go. He hides behind a curtain. We haven't seen him in a month.
The powers that be are
yeah.
happy if you and I pay for our petrol,
Right.
sit at home, watch TV, buy more food, go to barbecues,
Right.
and pretend that that's a life. That's
Yeah.
what it is.
That's not life. That's not life. Smoking cigars, drinking scotch, that's part of it, but I want to know more. And that's the problem I have.
That's why smoking cigars is such a dangerous pursuit. It's such a
I know,
thoughtful
that's the
pursuit.
same thing. I figure if I'm going to go, I might as well enjoy it. My thing is, and I've said this before, and I said it to the guy on the plane, I've said it on shows, is that if I meet, just say they're the people that are running the universe or the planet see this and like, you know what, we like these two guys. We're going to go meet with them. My question to them is, if they're human, then I don't really, it's like, that's really cool. That's great. Whatever. Can like, I see your castle. I'm happy. But if they're non-human, let's say, I'm going to be like, here's my question. And no one can answer this. Not even the guy on the plane, which I thought was interesting because they talk about this CIA Gateway Absolute project. And I'm like, where is zero? And it goes to Aristotle's turtle upon turtle. So at some point, there had to be a beginning, right? But because there can't be nothing, then all of a sudden there's something. I'm sorry that science doesn't work. It's a nice hypothesis, the Big Bang. To me, the Big Bang is you just turned on a light. Ooh, there's your Big Bang. But no one can answer where. I want to know zero. Like, get me all the way back.
There's a really good scientific model that might help answer your question. The hypothesis, and it can only be a hypothesis because no one's tried this, is as you fly towards a black hole, as you physically fly, let's say you're in a spaceship going towards a black hole.
Right.
To the observer, to here on Earth, if you can actually watch, if it's possible, that's why it's called a thought experiment, because you can't actually do it, right? It's a thought experiment. If you can actually watch someone, to you, it will look, as they get closer to a black hole, where the gravity is increasing exponentially, it will look like they're moving slower.
Right.
They're actually getting faster, but it will look like they're getting slower and slower and slower. In reality, what will happen is as I get closer to a black hole, you'll be aging at a gazillion miles per hour.
Right.
As I get closer to a black hole, so you'll go from aging 1 day every second to 1,000,000 years every second.
Right.
As I get closer to a black hole. So this is what they say. The hypothesis is time, space, relativity kicks in. Everything becomes one thing. Right. And as you get closer to this black hole, the black hole being the singularity, exactly.
Right.
Remember the Disney movie, The Black Hole, right? It's the singularity, right? If you treat that
or an
as singular
ex-wife,
point.
same thing. Yeah. So
the thing is, so as you get closer, everyone else thinks you're falling into the black hole, but for you, time is slowing down. So the closer you get, the further it gets away. The closer you get, the further away. It's almost like you never get there.
Yeah.
It's almost like you never get there. And this is what happens when you deal with numbers and hypothetical physics and theoretical physics.
Right.
Numbers are very, very hard for you to understand.
Right.
Because extreme numbers, extreme distance, extreme space, which is why the turtle's all the way down is the best way of understanding it. How many turtles? It's turtles all the way down.
All the way down. Yeah. But still nobody, if we live in a black hole, that's cool. If we live in a simulation, I mean, now they're saying we live in a simulation, a matrix, blah, 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 blah.
Anything that makes sense. Our brain is searching for anything that makes sense to us. So because we all saw the Matrix 20 years ago, we're now at that age where the Matrix begins to we live in a Matrix.
There's Harvard guys, it's the Matrix. Then there's the Thursday hypothesis. There's this and that. And to me, it'd be like, if I could meet whoever, My big question, I like when I go, whether there's something or not, I can't do anything about it.
I
But I
mean,
just want to hear this
we describe things in the way we describe them. If you read Dante's Divine
Inferno.
Comedy and the
Yeah,
first part, the circles of hell,
right.
seven circles. There were seven circles of hell, but I think the lower hell, or sorry, upper hell had two extra parts, so it could be nine
It's 9
circles.
circles.
But there are seven circles of hell, but there's one circle that's divided into two or three parts. Anyway,
Right,
that was his way of painting for the common man what he thought was going on in this world.
right.
And that was relevant then. Now, this
Yeah.
matrix philosophy is
Is
only there
relative
because
to
of the
today.
movie.
Yeah,
Because this is something we visually seen. It was, oh, yes, I live in a matrix.
right.
Or do you remember when Tron came out in sort of 1980, 81, 82, whatever it was, right? Yeah.
Oh, Tron. Yeah, that was a great flick.
Tron, Jeff Bridges, yeah. And
Yeah,
then all of a sudden, everyone lives inside a computer. It was very
right.
computer age now.
Yeah.
We relate to the things that our common cultures can relate to. That's all.
Right,
That's all it is, right? The whole point of theoretical physics is that it should transcend ages. So
right.
it does, because you have people like Aristotle. I'm sure there are people that existed 300,000 years ago, a million
Hmm.
years ago, and I'm 100% sure, this is not anything sensationalist, that somewhere across the galaxy, uh, in a galaxy far, far away, a long time ago,
There you
there
go.
are people, there are not people, there are beings,
Hmm.
there's life, and it may be, maybe, and it probably is, it's likely to be far, far more advanced than we'll ever be,
Right.
because we've existed for such, you know, the
Insignificant
universe,
amount of
this
time.
part of the universe has existed for such a period of time. I think
Yeah,
it's arrogance to be dismissive of all these things. So
I agree.
if someone thinks they found columns
Good for them.
under the pyramids,
Dig, baby, dig.
go dig them up.
Yeah, let's dig them up. Let's see what it is. Let's unleash the lion. Well, it's the same in the Antarctic, right? There's pyramids, there's technology. You hear these stories of at the end of the day, there's so much sensationalism. And I remember I was listening to a UFO expert, a government one,
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you, not somebody who's like on Discovery Channel or whatever. And he said one day all these experts are just going to be proven wrong, that they're just spouting bullshit. He said at the end of the day, he says there's only, as he put it, there's only a handful of us on this planet that actually know. And he said, and it's not the people that run around telling everybody what they know.
That's
And
right.
he said, like these congressional hearings where these guys are like, yes, we have non-ets. He says, that's okay. You can say stuff like that. He said, because most of the American public doesn't care. And I said, I saw this on CNN in 2019. I never forgot this. The Pentagon, they had a press conference. It was live on CNN. They were talking about something, and somebody said, what about UFOs? And the general that was giving the press conference on CNN said, yes, we have off-world vehicles. Full stop. That was it. And nobody questioned it. It didn't make the papers. And I was like, well, that's interesting. So we have become nummified, which I
Yeah.
guess for the people that want to rule the planet is great, because nobody thinks
I
they're
think
all
that's the
ostriches and
objective.
skin.
I think
Yeah.
that's the objective.
So that's
If a
right.
cow had consciousness, if a
Yeah.
cow could
That.
talk to you,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have the heart to kill it. You wouldn't have the
Yeah.
heart to eat its meat, or it.
Mm.
That's the balance of the world.
Right.
And as for these secrets, like even to more recent times, or still ancient times, but
Mhm.
more relevantly, if you could find the Ark of the Covenant, and if
Oh,
you could actually open it, and if you could
yeah.
actually see these tablets inside, there might be something there. There's a side note that might say, oh, by the way, you know what I mean? It could
Yeah.
be, but you will never find it. You will never find the Ark of the Covenant. You will never see the stone tablets.
Well, it's
You
supposed to
will
be in
hear.
that temple in Ethiopia is the Ark of the Covenant. I don't know if it's really there, but that's where it's supposed to be. The Ark of the Covenant is supposed to be
Yeah,
in
but
that temple in Ethiopia.
all sorts of places and people have taken
Mm.
ownership of what they think are sacred objects,
Right.
because
Right.
that gives them power.
Yeah.
There's a thorn from Jesus's um,
Brown.
crown of thorns. I think
Yeah.
in some cathedral in France, and
Right.
that's a venerated sacred object. Now, God knows where it came from, even if it did
Hmm.
come from a crown.
Right.
Right, but what it does is it gives that cathedral power to draw people in and say, come and
Right.
worship here, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that is what it is.
Well, I know the one in Ethiopia is fascinating because I know Graham Hancock, when he went to interview them, was saying that anybody who goes in, there's only one guy that's allowed or whatever. They literally, over time, to go blind. So whatever's in there is causing them to go blind, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so maybe you got something. I think the histories of the world are fascinating. And I never dismissed, I was fascinated when I was a kid with this stuff. I've never dismissed any of it. Even the Great Wall of China to me is fascinating. Like if you go and you walk it, if you look at the craftsmanship, you can't do shit like that today. And this is 5,000 years ago. I mean, so if you look, it's like, okay, same with the pyramids. They have the stones in Bolivia that we've been to when we were doing deals there. They took us out to the middle of nowhere, and you see these stones that are perfectly cut and aligned. You can't stick paper through them. And they're like, how old are they? 10 to 15,000 years old. And they're like, they chiseled them. Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, the laser
I mean, it's
cutter.
the
Yeah,
arrogance.
right. Like we
That's the
chiseled.
sort
Yeah,
of
no,
inbuilt arrogance. It's a
right.
systematic arrogance that
The
we
lines in
are
that
the most
NASCAR.
advanced.
Right, but look at the lines of NASCAR, right? All the you go
Yeah.
from on Peru, right? All the animal figures, and they're like, oh, these people just walk the path. Really? I'm walking a bird. I'm gonna walk the path of a bird every day. Or someone was in a hot air balloon. So all their theories go away, um, and or hypothesis. So to me, it's just fascinating. So since I'm a kid, I've always been like, I would like if an alien landed tomorrow and said, "Do you want to go?" I'm like, I'm gone. Like, yeah, let's go. Like, let's go see the unit. I want to see everything. So I've always been like, let's go.
I
But I
think
don't think they're coming.
I think it's fascinating enough here. I think they're around. I think
Yep.
technology, there is, we say alien technology. What I mean is there's technology not of this earth, not developed on this
Right.
earth, that is
Right.
here.
Outer
There is
worldly.
thinking, there's outer world thinking on this
Yep.
planet,
Yep.
thinking technology. There is what I'm finding fascinating. This takes me back to the top of the program, is
Yeah.
how people generally are thinking. People, I think it's a social media thing. People are sort of
Hmm.
very empowered to have an opinion.
Yeah.
And that I'm wondering, where is that going? Where will be in not 50 years' time? Where will we be in five, if I'm still alive, in five
Right.
years' time? Because the world has changed a lot since COVID. That's
Hmm.
5 years ago, 2019, 2020. That was only five
Yep.
years ago. Uh, the world was significantly different pre-COVID
Hmm.
than it is post-COVID,
Correct.
in many, 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 many ways, right? And I'm wondering what direction we're going in. And the Great Pyramids at Giza and these so-called scientific discoveries, and I say
Mhm.
that not because I'm skeptical, it's just because the
Right.
jury's out, right?
Right.
Uh, where is the world going? Where's the world of cigars going?
Yeah. Nobody knows. The
I
good
know
thing is that they're in
it's for
cigars.
Cuban cigars next
Oh
week.
yeah, Cuba. I'm
Back to
sorry.
Cuba.
I will tell you that we did have a couple New World cigar or non-Cuban cigars reach out to us, and they said, "Would you, meaning me, because God forbid they'd send it to you, would you smoke our cigars and try them on your show and tell us what you think?" And I'm like, "Sure, send them." So if these people really come through over the next couple of months, we may be trying some non-Cuban cigars here in America
I,
and give them an honest feedback. So there you go.
I can give you the feedback now. Just send
There
them
we
back.
go.
Just send them back. Send
Send
them
them. I
back.
don't. Hey, you like EGM? That's a non-Cuban that you like.
Um. Uh. It's well. There's. Let me be straightforward. There's one that I'm surprised by, and we spoke about that
The
on the
Lancero, yeah.
Encanto. The Encanto, the Lancero-sized cigar. It was
Yeah.
slightly different. So
And you like the Davidoff Year of the Snake. So you do. There's certain non-Cubans that you do like.
yeah, but you
It's
have to go
just that
looking. You have to go
I know.
looking for them. And I
Well,
don't disagree with you. Smoke them, yeah. But don't smoke them thinking, oh, this might be the next best thing. Just
oh, I know.
smoke them dismissively,
Yes, that's
and
exactly
then be pleasantly surprised.
right.
I think
Well, I'm
that's
going
a
to do it live on the air when they get here. I'm going to let them cure in the humidor, and then that Saturday I will light them up. We'll give them a little plug, and at the end of the show, I'll say, "Hey, this is what I thought." And if they
it's like
suck, I'm going to say they suck. And if I like them, I'm going
it's
to be like,
like
"These are good."
yeah, it's like going to a party with no expectations,
That's true.
and
Yeah.
then pleasantly leaving slightly uplifted.
That's Hilda's House of Pain. That's where I go to those parties where I get uplifted. So there you go. My friend, this has been a blast. I enjoy talking about the end of the world pyramids and
Something
UFOs
different.
and all that. Yeah,
I,
I liked
I
it.
I thought that was the only way to wind down the sort of the
Ramadan,
non-smoking
final
period.
Ramadan. Yeah. So the
And
show today, the live show is called The End of the World,
as we
Pyramids and
know it,
Cigars. As we know it, final Ramadan episode. And next week, kids, if you made it this far,
I
Chris is
say
going
the
to be back.
caption you put up on the thumbnail that shows the world is ending, and
Well, I think,
see if it acts as clickbait to get
okay,
people to
I'm
say,
going to put,
what are we engaging with here? It's a cigar show, and say the world is ending. The end of the world is nigh. Now, 30, 40 years ago, you would have written the end of the world is nigh.
well,
But
it's
now,
nigh,
because
right?
people's intelligence level has gone down, you have
Right.
to enunciate it. The world is ending.
Ending. I think I'm going to see what happens. I'll put the world is ending, and then we'll just put cigars in bracket, and we'll see what AI can generate as a picture.
I have a slightly more, even take it up another notch. Instead of saying the world is ending,
Yeah.
the end of the world.
Okay. Here we go. End of the world. And so the
We go
end,
to 0 point, yeah. As you were talking about 0 point, how to get to
0
0 point.
point.
We put
There
it
you
in the
go.
title, the end of the
End
world,
of the world.
and
And then
the subtitle can be, what was it? Back to zero, back to
back to
zero,
zero. Back to end of the world. Back to zero. That's going to be
back to
wild.
zero.
That's people are going to be, what kind of cigar show is that? Back to zero. All right. Here we
And
go. So that's the show.
if people don't like it, they can
Yeah.
fuck off.
Well, that's what we tell them all the time, so it's okay. And the exciting news is, once again, our sommelier will be back next week to do battle histories. And he got really Hsabanos history to tell us. So, it's a good thing we don't have
I'm
to
gonna
do
have to do a
royalties today.
Matrix version now.
I know, right? You're gonna have to do. So, and does he remember that he has a show to do next Saturday? We should remind him because he hasn't posted anything. He doesn't get involved in the WhatsApp chat groups.
I
Yeah,
suspect. Now, I'm not really a controversial person, but I might
yeah.
have
Here
to
we
say
go,
something slightly controversial.
sir.
I suspect that Usman
Yeah.
thinks he's better than us.
Well, sure. That goes without saying. His, going. He gets invited to the Cuban thing.
I
Gets invited to
I
Qatar.
I think Usman might think that he's outgrown his cigar credentials have
Wow.
outgrown the show.
Really? Hmm.
No, this is not a tease, by the way.
Hmm.
This is not me jabbing and jibbing and poking and this and
All
that the
right.
other. I think Usman thinks that we
Mhm.
are here and
Yeah.
he is,
Oh, sure. He's not. We're not worthy.
and that he runs the world.
Oh. Well, we have the green curtain for
The
him, so he
puppet
can stand
master.
behind
You
it.
know
That's
what
fine.
was
Yep.
it
The puppet
in
master.
The Godfather? I thought you would be the one to hold the strings.
Right, right. That's awesome. I like that.
Oh, by the
Uh,
way, incidentally, before we sign out, yeah, well, you
yeah,
know, the noir thing. Oh, by the way, the thing about this one, I was just joking. I'm trying to tease him back onto the show.
yeah. He comes next
Uh,
week. He's breaking fast, apparently, because God forbid he does it with us. So there you go.
I mean, you could come on, but that's something else. Anyway, the thing is this: I watched, on your advice, I watched a movie that had
French
been
Connection.
on the French Connection. I watched it, and as soon as you log off here, I will give you feedback on the French Connection. By the way, I
Okay.
recommend people watch the French Connection.
French Connection. Yeah, it's a great flick. Guys, girls, thank you for watching us live. And if you weren't watching
And
us live and didn't
aliens,
watch
and
replays, and
aliens,
aliens,
and
and natural beings, and remember, you people that are running the world, feel free to send your cigars over to us, and we'll text them out for you. Or you can just abduct us either way, and we could just do this live for you all day. Be your gestures. Anyway, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll be broadcast this later today, so everybody around the world can see it that didn't see it. And the title of the show won't be The End of the World with Pyramids and Cigars. It'll be The End of the World Back to Zero. And we will see you next Saturday. And next Saturday, Usman will be here. I'm not going to play his little tease. And we'll have cigars in our mouths, scotch in our hands. Asian hookers will be running wild. I'm just kidding about the scotch. and it'll be just a great time. So we'll see everybody next week. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.